My parents chose to skip my wedding. He loves the White Lotus, so we'll be in Thailand. They said my name is Christine Parker, and for 34 years, I've been the backup child. You know the type, the understudy, the contingency plan, the at least we have another one offspring. The child who exists primarily as insurance against the favorite failing to fulfill their destiny. In my family, that favorite was my brother Ian, to hear my parents tell it. Ian emerged from the womb clutching a calculator and reciting stock market predictions. By the time I arrived 3 years later, they'd already allocated all their pride and expectations to their firstborn golden boy. I was just extra. Don't get me wrong, they fed me, clothed me, and sent me to decent schools. But while Ian's finger paintings were preserved in acid-free portfolios, mine decorated the refrigerator for exactly 1 week before mysteriously migrating to the recycling bin. When Ian made the honor roll, my parents threw parties. When I did the same, they nodded and said, "That's nice, dear. Did you see your brother's new business plan?" Growing up in Houston as the second favorite child wasn't all bad. It taught me self-reliance and the valuable skill of eating dinner while being completely invisible at the table. I learned to celebrate my own achievements, because nobody else would. Most importantly, I figured out early that following my own path was my only option. Pleasing my parents was Ian's job, and he was already working overtime. So while Ian followed our father's footsteps into the business world, getting his MBA, landing a corner office at a prestigious firm, and acquiring the requisite trophy wife Mary, 2.0 children, perfect Emma, and precocious Aiden, and McMansion in the suburbs, I chose a different direction entirely. I became a doctor, not the glamorous kind that gets TV shows named after them. I'm an oncologist, specializing in palliative care. I help people with terminal cancer live their remaining time with dignity and minimal suffering. It's challenging, emotionally draining work that regularly reduces me to tears in my car after shifts. It's also the most meaningful thing I've ever done. My parents were spectacularly underwhelmed by my career choice. All those brains, my mother, Bonnie, lamented during my medical school graduation dinner. "And you're using them to hold people's hands while they die." She said this while wearing a "My Son the Executive" button that clashed violently with her floral dress. It's not exactly wealth building, my father, Arthur, added with a disappointed sigh. Not like Ian's work. Did you know he just closed another merger, 7 figures in bonuses this quarter alone? I did know. Actually, we'd all heard about it approximately 17 times since sitting down to eat. "Medicine is a noble profession," my boyfriend Beau interjected, squeezing my hand under the table. We'd been dating for 2 years by then, after meeting when I treated his father for pancreatic cancer, despite the sad circumstances. We'd connected instantly over a shared love of terrible puns and 1980s movie trivia. My mother gave him the once-over, her gaze lingering disapprovingly on his casual button-down shirt. "And what is it you do again, Ben?" "It's Beau, Mom, and he's a high school history teacher," I said, for the 3rd time that evening. "A teacher." She exchanged a meaningful look with my father. How public-spirited. What she meant, of course, was poor. My parents measured human worth exclusively in tax brackets. The fact that Beau was nurturing the next generation of citizens meant less to them than his inability to afford a vacation home. "Ian and Mary are building a pool house," my father announced abruptly, as if to cleanse his palate of our financial inadequacy. "With one of those swim-up bars, like at resorts." And just like that, my medical school graduation dinner became yet another celebration of Ian's achievements. I should have been used to it by then, but somehow the disappointment always felt fresh. Beau, saint that he is, spent the rest of the evening asking thoughtful questions about my new residency, while my parents talked over us about Ian's investment portfolio. Later that night, as we drove home, Beau asked the question I'd been avoiding for years. "Why do you keep trying with them, Chrissy?" They're never going to change. I stared out the window at the passing streetlights, each one illuminating and then releasing us, like hope repeatedly ignited and extinguished. They're my parents, I said finally, and sometimes not often, but sometimes they actually see me. Like when I got into medical school, Dad actually teared up, or when Mom was sick last year, and she said she was glad to have a doctor in the family. I swallowed hard. I keep thinking if I just achieve enough, they'll finally be proud of me too. Bo was quiet for a long moment. What if the problem isn't that you haven't achieved enough? What if it's that nothing will ever be enough? I didn't answer. Some truths are too painful to acknowledge, even when they're staring you in the face. Instead, I kept trying. Through my residency, my fellowship, opening my own practice. I dutifully attended family gatherings where Ian's children received lavish gifts while mine were afterthoughts. I listened to endless stories about Ian's brilliance, while my own accomplishments went unmentioned. I smiled through pointed comparisons of our lifestyles, as if my choice to work in medicine, rather than finance, was a character flaw rather than a calling. And then, 3 years ago, everything seemed to change. My parents called me in a panic. Their investment in a friend's business venture had gone catastrophically wrong. They needed $50,000 to avoid losing their house. We wouldn't ask if we had anywhere else to turn, my father said, his voice cracking with uncharacteristic vulnerability. Ian's money is all tied up in trusts for the kids' college funds. We're so ashamed, my mother added. But you're our only hope, Christine. For the first time in my life, they needed me, not Ian, not their golden child, but me, their afterthought daughter, the doctor, the responsible one, the one who had quietly built a life without their approval or assistance. I should have been suspicious of their sudden recognition. Instead, I was pathetically grateful for the chance to finally be valuable to them. The $50,000 they needed represented most of my savings money Bo and I had been setting aside for a house down payment, for our future. But these were my parents. They had raised me, however imperfectly. How could I not help them? We should get something in writing, Bo suggested cautiously when I told him. A repayment plan, interest rate, timeline just to keep everything clear and businesslike. They're my parents, not strangers, I protested. His expression was gentle but firm. Which is exactly why you need clear boundaries. Family finances get messy fast, Chrissy. Reluctantly. I agreed. My father bristled when I presented the loan agreement, 5 years of monthly payments at a modest interest rate, but signed it after some grumbling about unnecessary formalities between family. For a few months afterward, something miraculous happened. My parents actually seemed to appreciate me. They called regularly, not just to discuss Ian but to ask about my life, my work, my plans. They remembered my birthday with a thoughtful gift rather than the usual belated card. My mother even invited me to lunch, just the two of us, an unprecedented event in our relationship. We couldn't have gotten through this without you, she told me, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. You've always been our rock. I nearly wept at those words, the validation I'd been seeking my entire life, finally granted. Maybe Bo had been right about establishing boundaries. Maybe all we'd needed was a reset of our relationship dynamic. When Bo proposed 6 months later, my parents seemed genuinely happy for us. They asked about wedding plans, offered suggestions for venues, even sent us brochures for potential honeymoon destinations, for the first time. I felt like a priority in their lives. The monthly loan repayments came regularly, accompanied by warm notes and occasional small gifts. We're so blessed to have such a generous daughter, my mother wrote in one card. You've saved us, and we'll never forget it. I began to believe that we'd turned a corner, that my parents had finally recognized my worth. Not as a substitute for Ian, but as my own person. The wedding planning brought us closer than we'd ever been, with my mother actually asking my preferences instead of imposing her own. Then, 3 months before the wedding, everything collapsed. "We have the most exciting news," my mother gushed during our weekly call. "Ian's invited us on an all-expenses-paid vacation to Thailand, 2 weeks at a 5-star resort." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely happy for them. "When are you going?" "We leave May 15th and get back on the 29th, she replied, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Ian says it's just like in that show he loves, the White Lotus. We're going to have such an adventure." My blood turned to ice. "Mom," I said slowly, "my wedding is May 20th. There was a pause just long enough to tell me everything I needed to know. "Oh," she said finally. "Oh dear. Is it really? I thought it was in June." She knew perfectly well when my wedding was. We'd sent save-the-date cards 6 months earlier. She'd helped me choose invitations just 3 weeks ago. "It's always been May 20th, I said, my voice strangely calm despite the earthquake happening inside me. "We've been planning it for months. You and Dad are supposed to walk me down the aisle together." Another pause. Longer this time. I could almost hear the calculations happening, the weighing of options, the assessment of which child's feelings were more valuable. "Well," she said finally, "is there any way you could move it? Just a few weeks. Ian's gone to so much trouble. And the resort is completely booked for the next year. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." In that moment, 34 years of being the backup child crystallized into perfect clarity. I wasn't just second best, I was no competition at all. I couldn't even win when I was the one getting married. "No, Mom," I said quietly. "I can't move my wedding so you can go on vacation with Ian." "Christine, be reasonable," she countered, her tone shifting from apologetic to irritated. "It's just a ceremony. You can have it any time. This trip is special. Ian's worked so hard, and he wants to treat us. He says it's to thank us for all we've done for him." "And what about what I've done for you?" The words escaped before I could stop them. "The $50,000 that saved your house. Does that not earn me even one day of your time?" "That's different," she said dismissively. "That was a loan we're paying back. This is about family loyalty." Family loyalty. As if I hadn't demonstrated mine 1,000 times over, starting with accepting my permanent second-place status in their hearts. "I understand," I said, surprised by how steady my voice remained. "You've made your choice very clear. Goodbye, Mom." I hung up and sat motionless for a long time, letting the truth sink in. My parents would rather attend a luxury vacation with their favorite child than witness their daughter's wedding. No explanation could soften that reality. When Beau came home and found me still sitting there, he didn't need me to explain. He just held me while I cried. Not delicate tears, but ugly, guttural sobs that felt torn from the deepest part of me. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into my hair. "I'm so sorry they can't see how amazing you are." The next day, my father called. I hoped. Really that he was calling to say they'd reconsidered, that they wouldn't miss my wedding for anything. Instead, he launched into a long justification of their decision, culminating in a suggestion that we hold a small ceremony when they returned from Thailand. "Maybe just immediate family," he proposed, as if offering a generous compromise. "More intimate that way. You've never been one for big, flashy events anyway, not like Ian." "We've already paid deposits on everything," I said. "The venue, the catering, the flowers, it's all booked and non-refundable." "Well," he said with an audible shrug, "that's unfortunate timing, but these things happen. I'm sure your guests will understand if you reschedule." That was when I finally, belatedly, got angry. "No, Dad," I said, my voice sharper than I'd ever used with him. "I won't be rescheduling my wedding because you and Mom would rather sip cocktails in Thailand with Ian. The unfortunate timing is entirely your choice. and it's a choice I'll remember for the rest of my life. Now listen here, he blustered. You're being unreasonable. We've supported you through everything. No, I interrupted. You haven't. You've tolerated me. You've compared me unfavorably to Ian at every opportunity. You've treated my achievements as consolation prizes and my life choices as disappointments. And now you're choosing a vacation over my wedding day. That's not fair, he protested weakly. What's not fair is that I spent my entire life trying to earn your approval, only to discover it was never available to me in the first place. My voice broke, but I pushed on. Go to Thailand, enjoy your trip, but understand that things will be different when you return. I hung up before he could respond. The wedding went ahead as planned on May 20th, instead of my parents walking me down the aisle. Beau's father escorted me the man whose life I'd helped make comfortable in his final months, who had become a genuine parent figure to me during his illness and beyond. You look beautiful, Doc, he whispered as we reached the altar where Beau waited, beaming at me through tears. I'm so proud to be standing today. Those simple words, "I'm proud," from someone who had no biological obligation to feel that way, meant more than all the validation I'd ever sought from my actual parents. The ceremony was everything we'd hoped for: intimate, joyful, centered on our love rather than pageantry. Beau's family surrounded us with genuine warmth and acceptance. My colleagues from the hospital cheered raucously when we were pronounced husband and wife. Even Ian sent a generous gift with a card apologizing for the family's absence, though he carefully avoided mentioning our parents' choice in the matter. For our honeymoon, we went to a quiet cabin in the Smoky Mountains, no five-star resort, no luxury amenities, just peace, nature, and each other. I checked my phone only once, finding dozens of congratulatory messages but nothing from my parents. According to their social media, they were having the time of their lives in Thailand, posing with elephants and lounging on pristine beaches. Are you okay? Beau asked, finding me staring at a photo of my parents and Ian raising tropical drinks in a sunset toast. I put the phone down and turned to my husband. Surprisingly, yes. I think I'm finally accepting what you've been telling me for years. They're not going to change, and it's not because I'm not enough. It's because nothing would ever be enough. He kissed me softly. You've always been more than enough, Chrissy. They just never had the sense to see it. We returned from our honeymoon to our small but comfortable apartment, ready to start our married life and save again for the house we'd put on hold to bail out my parents. I threw myself into work, finding solace in the meaningful connections I made with patients and their families. Beau continued teaching, his students adoring his enthusiasm for making history relevant to their lives. A month passed with no word from my parents. I didn't reach out either, still nursing the wound of their absence at the most important event of my life. I assumed they were giving me space to get over my disappointment, as they'd often characterized my legitimate feelings throughout my childhood. Then, on a Sunday afternoon while Beau and I were painting our living room, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Christine, he said without preamble, we need to discuss the loan payments. Not, how was the wedding? Not, I'm sorry we missed your special day. Not even, how are you? Just straight to money. What about them? I asked, setting down my paintbrush. Well, he cleared his throat uncomfortably. Your mother and I are a bit concerned that we haven't received anything from you this month. I blinked in confusion. From me? You're supposed to be paying me, Dad, for the loan. He laughed, a short, awkward sound. No. We had an understanding. You were going to help us out monthly, especially now with Ian's situation. Ian's situation, I repeated, feeling like I'd stepped into an alternate reality. What are you talking about? He's going through a rough patch at work, my father explained, as if this should be obvious to me. Restructuring, possible layoffs. We're helping him with some expenses until things stabilize. We thought you'd want to contribute, being his sister and all. I sat down heavily on our drop-clothed sofa. Let me get this straight. You think I should be sending you money when you still owe me nearly $40,000 from the loan I gave you? That wasn't a loan, he said dismissively. That was a gift. Family helps family. Christine. The audacity was so breathtaking that I actually laughed. I have a signed loan agreement that says otherwise, Dad, with both your signatures. Well, we never thought you'd actually hold us to that, he replied, sounding genuinely affronted. It was just a formality for your boyfriend's peace of mind. We assumed once you understood the reality of the situation. The reality, I interrupted, is that I gave you my house savings to bail you out of a financial emergency, with a clear agreement about repayment. An agreement you've been honoring for over a year, I might add. And now, after skipping my wedding for a luxury vacation, you're calling to tell me you're not only stopping payments but expecting me to send you money instead. There's no need to be dramatic, he huffed. This is what families do. They support each other. Ian would do the same for you if the situations were reversed. Would he? I asked quietly. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like support in this family only flows in one direction toward Ian. You missed my wedding for his vacation. You expect me to subsidize his rough patch when I'm still owed tens of thousands of dollars. Where exactly is the mutual support in that equation? You're being selfish, my father declared, his tone hardening. After everything we've done for you. Name one thing, I challenged. Years of suppressed anger finally breaking through. Name one significant sacrifice you've made for me that even approaches what you routinely do for Ian. His silence was damning. That's what I thought, I said. The loan payments will continue as agreed. Dad, I expect this month's payment by the end of the week, and I don't expect to be sending you money for Ian or anyone else. Your mother will be very disappointed in you, he said, wielding the threat that had controlled me for most of my life. This time, it fell flat. I'm disappointed in both of you, I replied simply. But I'm done letting that disappointment dictate my choices. Goodbye, Dad. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence until Beau came looking for me. Everything okay? He asked, taking in my expression. They think the loan was a gift. I told him, still processing the conversation. And now they want me to send them money to help Ian through some work crisis. Beau sat beside me, paint-speckled hands carefully kept away from the furniture. What are you going to do? I looked at my husband, this kind, principled man who had seen my worth from the beginning, who had advised caution when my parents asked for money, who had stood by me through every disappointment. I'm going to stand my ground, I said firmly. I'm going to insist they honor our agreement, and I'm going to stop expecting them to suddenly transform into the supportive parents I've always wanted. What I didn't anticipate was the campaign of emotional manipulation that followed. My mother called in tears, claiming they were on the verge of financial ruin. Extended family members I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly contacted me, urging me to help your parents in their time of need. My Aunt Barbara, my mother's sister, even suggested that my doctor salary meant I didn't really need the money back. But what about their Thailand vacation? I asked her pointedly. That couldn't have been cheap. That was Ian's treat, she replied defensively. They couldn't very well turn down a gift from their son, but they could very well miss their daughter's wedding for it, I noted. The calls became more frequent, more desperate. My parents attempted different tactics: guilt, anger, appeals to family loyalty, even veiled threats about cutting me out of their will, which was almost laughable, given I'd never expected to be meaningfully included in the first place. Through it all, Beau remained my steadfast support. You're not crazy, he assured me during particularly difficult moments. What they're doing is called gaslighting, and it's a form of emotional abuse. I'd started therapy shortly after the wedding debacle, working to unpack a lifetime of being the least favored child. My therapist, Dr. Winters, helped me recognize the toxic patterns I'd normalized. Your parents have constructed a family dynamic where Ian's needs are paramount and yours are secondary, she explained during one session. They've trained you to accept this imbalance as natural, even deserved. Breaking that pattern feels wrong to them because it challenges their entire worldview. Armed with this understanding and Beau's unwavering support, I made a decision. After 2 months of ignored payment due dates and escalating emotional warfare, I contacted a lawyer. This is a straightforward contract enforcement, Miranda Jeffries assured me after reviewing the loan agreement. Their signatures are clear, the terms are unambiguous, and they've established a pattern of payment that acknowledges the debt. We'll start with a formal demand letter and escalate if necessary. The demand letter official, dispassionate, legally precise, hit my parents like a thunderbolt. My father called immediately after receiving it, sputtering with indignation. A lawyer? You sicked a lawyer on your own parents. What kind of daughter does that? The kind whose parents try to renege on a 50,000 loan, I replied calmly. The kind whose parents miss her wedding for a vacation and then expect financial support with no reciprocity. The kind who's finally setting boundaries after a lifetime of being treated as less important than her brother. This isn't about Ian, he protested. It's always been about Ian, I countered. Every decision, every priority, every family resource, it's always been allocated based on what Ian wants or needs. I've accepted that reality. Dad, I just won't finance it anymore. There was a long silence on the line. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its bluster. We don't have the money, Christine, we really don't. The Thailand trip wiped out our savings. For once, I believed him. My parents had never been particularly financially responsible, living beyond their means to maintain appearances and indulge Ian's expectations. Then we can negotiate a revised payment schedule, I said. But the debt won't be forgiven, and I won't be contributing to Ian's expenses. He'll lose his house, my father said, a final attempt at leverage. Then he'll have to downsize, like any other adult facing financial hardship, I replied. He's made 6 figures for years. Dad, if he hasn't saved enough to weather a rough patch, that's not my responsibility to fix. The conversation ended with my father agreeing to meet with me, my lawyer, and Ian to discuss the situation. I insisted on Ian's presence because I was tired of being cast as the villain in a narrative he was only hearing secondhand. We met at Miranda's office, neutral territory, with a witness. My parents arrived looking grim. My father tight-lipped and my mother red-eyed from crying. Ian came separately, his expression confused and wary. I don't understand why I'm here, he said as we settled around the conference table. This is between you and Mom and Dad. You're here because you're part of the situation, I explained. And because I want you to hear directly from me what's happening, not a filtered version. With Miranda's help, I laid out the facts: the original loan, the signed agreement, the consistent payments until after my wedding, and the sudden claim that the money had been a gift coupled with expectations that I would now financially support the family. Ian's confusion deepened as the story unfolded. Wait, he interrupted, looking at our parents. You told me you took out a bank loan to cover that investment loss. You never said Christine gave you the money. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. We didn't want to worry you, my mother said weakly. You were so busy with work. And now you're saying she should be helping me, Ian continued, his face flushing. With money she's still owed. What the hell? Language, Ian, my mother admonished automatically. No, Mom, don't language me right now. Ian turned to me, genuine remorse in his eyes. I had no idea, Christine. Yeah, I swear. They told me they were handling their finances fine, that the loan payments were manageable. I never would have invited them on that trip if I'd known. The trip you knew conflicted with my wedding, I couldn't help asking. He winced. They told me you'd changed the date, that you'd rescheduled for June because of some issue with the venue. I stared at our parents, who had the grace to look ashamed. You lied to both of us. I realized aloud. You told me Ian couldn't reschedule the trip, and you told him I had rescheduled the wedding. We were trying to keep the peace, my father muttered. No, Ian said flatly. You were manipulating both of us to get what you wanted. And now you're in financial trouble again, and instead of being honest with me, you're trying to extract money from my sister, who you already owe 40 grand. He shook his head in disgust. This stops now. For the first time in my life, I saw my golden boy brother truly angry with our parents, not annoyed, not inconvenienced, but genuinely, righteously furious on my behalf. Here's what's going to happen, he continued, his business negotiation skills suddenly evident. You will resume payments to Christine according to the original agreement. I'll help you restructure your finances to make this manageable, but the debt will be honored. And you will apologize sincerely for missing her wedding and then lying about it to both of us. My mother began to protest, but Ian cut her off. This isn't a discussion, Mom. This is me telling you how it's going to be if you want me to continue helping you with your finances. Because I'm done enabling this toxic dynamic where Christine's needs and feelings are treated as optional. I sat in stunned silence, watching my brother advocate for me with a fierceness I'd never imagined possible. All these years, I'd resented him for being the favorite, never considering that he might be as much a victim of our parents' manipulation as I was, just in a different way. The meeting ended with a revised payment agreement, signed and notarized on the spot. My parents left subdued, having been thoroughly dressed down by both their children and a lawyer for good measure. Ian stayed behind, awkwardly shifting his weight as we stood in the parking lot. I'm sorry, Christine, he said finally. I should have seen what was happening. I should have questioned things more. It's not your fault, I told him, meaning it. They created this dynamic when we were too young to understand it. We just played the roles we were assigned. Still, he insisted, I've been complicit. I've accepted the preferential treatment without asking why or how it affected you. That's on me. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. We made tentative plans to meet for coffee the following week, just us, without our parents' influence shaping the interaction, true to the new agreement. My parents resumed payments. They also sent a formal written apology for missing the wedding, though it felt more like a response to Ian's demand than a genuine expression of remorse. Beau and I decided to use the repaid loan money to establish a small scholarship for nursing students at the hospital where I worked. Let's turn this whole mess into something positive, he suggested. Something that reflects your values, not theirs. The Christine and Beau Parker Compassionate Care Scholarship funded 2 students its first year, with plans to expand as more of the loan was repaid. The recipients dedicated, empathetic young people committed to easing suffering represented everything I believed in professionally and personally. 6 months after the confrontation at Miranda's office, I discovered I was pregnant. The joy Beau and I felt was tempered by anxiety about how my parents would react, whether they would show the same favoritism to our child that they had to Ian's children. We don't have to tell them right away, Beau suggested gently. We can take time to establish our boundaries first. But I was done hiding. No, I said firmly. We'll tell them, but on our terms. And we'll be very clear about our expectations for how they treat our child. We invited my parents to dinner at our home, the small house we'd finally been able to purchase now that the loan repayments had resumed. They arrived bearing awkward smiles and a houseplant, clearly unsure of their footing in this new reality where I stood my ground and Ian backed me up. After a stilted meal, I shared our news. We're expecting a baby in July, I announced, watching their faces carefully. Your 3rd grandchild. My mother's eyes lit up with genuine pleasure, the most authentic, positive reaction she'd had to any news about my life in recent memory. Oh, Christine, that's wonderful. We're very happy, I acknowledged. And we want to be clear about something important. This child will be loved and valued for exactly who they are, not compared to their cousins, not measured against external standards of success, not made to feel they need to earn their place in the family. My father shifted uncomfortably. Of course we'll love the baby. Christine, we love all our grandchildren. I know you do, I said evenly. But there's a difference between love and equal treatment. Emma and Aiden receive different attention, different praise, and different material support than our child will. I need to know that you understand that pattern, and that you're committed to treating all your grandchildren with the same level of interest and enthusiasm. My parents exchanged glances, clearly caught off guard by the directness of my conditions. This isn't an ultimatum, I clarified. It's an opportunity for a better relationship, for a fresh start. But it requires acknowledgement of the past and a commitment to do better. To my surprise, it was my mother who responded first. We haven't been fair to you, she admitted quietly. I see that now. We got caught in a pattern of focusing on Ian because he was so demanding of attention. You were always so self-sufficient, so capable on your own. It was easier to pour our energy where it seemed most needed. It wasn't a complete reckoning with their behavior, but it was more insight than I'd ever heard from her before. I don't expect perfection, I told them. I just expect effort and awareness, and I won't tolerate my child experiencing what I did growing up. They nodded solemnly, and I chose to believe they meant it not with blind faith this time, but with cautious optimism, backed by firm boundaries. Our daughter, Storm Elizabeth Parker, was born on a sweltering July morning in Houston. She arrived with a full head of dark hair and a determination that manifested in powerful lungs and a grip that could cut off circulation to Beau's finger. My parents visited the hospital the day after her birth, bringing a modest but thoughtful gift, a soft blanket and a children's book I'd loved as a child. My mother held Storm with reverent care, tears streaming down her face. "She's perfect," she whispered. "Just perfect." Yes, I agreed, watching my daughter's tiny features. Exactly as she is. It's been 2 years since that day. The journey hasn't been perfect. Old patterns reassert themselves sometimes, requiring gentle or not so gentle correction. My parents still occasionally slip into comparing the grandchildren or showing preference for Ian's family events over ours. But there's a difference now. They catch themselves more often, make visible efforts to distribute their attention more evenly. And most importantly, they respect the boundaries I've established. The loan will be fully repaid next year. Ian and I have developed a relationship independent of our parents, built on mutual respect and the shared experience of breaking free from toxic family dynamics. Beau continues to be my rock, my partner in all things, and the most devoted father imaginable to our strong-willed, curious little girl. As for me, the backup child, the afterthought, the one who was never quite enough, I've discovered something profound in standing my ground. My worth was never something I needed to earn through achievement or conformity. It was always there, inherent and complete, waiting for me to recognize and defend it. These days, when I look in the mirror, I see someone who finally understands her own value, not as measured against a sibling, not as defined by parental approval, but as determined by her own heart and choices. My name is Christine Parker, and I am nobody's backup plan. I am exactly who and what I'm meant to be: a doctor, a wife, a mother, a woman who refused to accept less than she deserved, and that, it turns out, is more than enough.